My name's Derek. I'm a volunteer at the Twin Valley Fire Department. I'm not sure if I'll be doing videos like this more often, but if I do, hopefully they'll be interesting and not just sound like I'm rambling. Because if I could tell you all the stories from the firehouse that I can remember off the top of my head, I'd probably be here all day. But anyway, I'm here to talk about, let's see, it was last Thursday, and today's Sunday. So I'm going to talk about how our work night went last Thursday. So I get there, and I'm playing pool with one of my friends. He's 11 years old, he's a fun kid to hang around. But then after a while, we were told that a bunch of the others were getting their gear on for training. And so I had no clue what we were doing, but I wanted in quickly. So I went to the bunker room, got my gear on, and I left the helmet just hanging in my hand. Oh, and just to clarify, I'm not certified, but I'm not a junior either. You have to be 18 to take the Fire 1 course to be certified. So on my helmet it says probationary. So I'm in training, I'm allowed to participate in this stuff, but I'm not certified. I'm probably going to have to do that when I graduate with my bachelor's degree, because it's a 172-hour course. I got my gear on, and that stuff is pretty heavy, but you get used to walking around in it after a while. You just feel light as a feather when you take it off. But the two engines that were just pulling out to go to this place, wherever we were going, was full. But then one of the men called me over to engine 5. And so it was my friend Ray, that guy in the passenger seat, and me with the whole back seat to myself. So I could sit wherever I wanted. But I sat in this middle seat that didn't have an air tank strapped to it. Because that's the way they are. The air tanks are in these little cubby holes, so to say. They click right in and you strap them in. So that way when you get into the engine on the way to a scene, then you can just buckle the waist strap and the shoulder straps on while you're riding to the scene, which is kind of cool. We didn't need air tanks for this, thankfully, because we weren't going to a fire. I still didn't know what we were doing as I was riding back there, and I kept asking around, like, so what are we doing? What kind of training are we doing? So when we got there, after a while, the one engine that has the ladder, the really big one on it, we just call it the ladder, there was a guy at the end, and the ladder was going all the way up to the roof of this old factory building. I think it was a factory, but it was basically stripped bare. There were like these really big concrete blocks in the middle of the floor, like boulders, like you could climb around on those. There were the support beams and everything, and the stairs, and pretty much everything you need to hold it together, but there was no equipment, nothing like that. And so I couldn't tell whether it was some kind of warehouse or a factory building. I'd been told by a few of them that we were going training, and when I saw this guy going up all the way to this roof, it was probably like 5-6 stories high. And so I remember saying, oh crap, are we gonna have to climb up there to practice? If we do, I'm gonna have to sit this one out. And I mean, it is a volunteer fire department anyway, so it doesn't really matter if you do or not. But so thankfully that wasn't what we were there for. We were down there for a safety inspection, because there were guys in another building nearby, and I guess they had emptied that building because they were worried about safety hazards, and so that made it easier for us to go down there and take a look around to do this safety inspection. And so the guy on the ladder, he was going up there to check out the roof on the outside. And then when you go into the inside of the building, there's this set of stairs, almost like you would see on a fire escape, but just, wider. And I guess harder. I mean, I'm not sure just what metal fire escapes are made of, but this, I'm pretty sure, was solid iron. But this was an old building. Some of the layers, I don't know what it was, paint, some kind of coating, it was chipping everywhere. So I was glad that I had my gloves on. So we went inside, and most of the adults were going upstairs, all the way up, and going all the way up those stairs. I went up with 2 other juniors, and of course, because I'm afraid of heights, I wanted to go up there. Don't get me wrong, but I was really hoping that I wouldn't get so freaked out by the time we got to the top. I was hoping that, I could do it. So, but I was still pretty nervous. I mean, I guess who wouldn't be? So, I get up, the 2 juniors are up ahead, and the first thing I do, and then I just start walking up those stairs, just climbing up those stairs, keeping my hands on the railing, and I mean, those were pretty solid stairs, but the combination of the heights and how old those stairs probably were, just made me nervous. And so I kept going, and I wanted to, push myself a little more. And then I remember looking up and like, good God, how many stairs does this place have? And so, I can't remember how many stairs. We had probably gone up like 5 double sets of stairs. Like, if this is one set of stairs, we had probably gone up about 5. And so, yeah, I lost track. I was just trying to, look up and try not to look down. And so, by the time we had maybe 2 tiers of stairs left, we were on this, basically this loft that had sort of a balcony. It was just like a rail. And just out of the corner of my eye, I could see just this big, way far below view of the ground floor where those really big concrete blocks were. And so as you can tell when you get nervous, like, my breathing was getting kind of shallow. It wasn't too bad, but it was kind of like a warning signal for me. And I mean, I probably wouldn't have. I was kind of worried that I would have a panic attack, and so you don't want to have something like that when you're on this loft, God knows how high up on this old building. And so I just said, okay, I can't do this, I gotta go back down. And so while part of me was relieved, the other part of me was kind of embarrassed because the rest of the guys were all up there checking out the roof from the inside. So from what I heard later is that part of the ceiling had caved in. And so both of the inside that we could see from the ground and the outside that the guy had seen, I don't know how many layers of metal or concrete or whatever are between those, but part of it had caved in, apparently. I didn't see anything like that, so I'm guessing it was just some multiple layer thing in the ceiling. But I didn't know that until we were riding in the engine back to the station. I could just hear my friend say it in the driver's seat. But after I had gone back down and waited with some other people in the, just in the open air next to one of the engines, I took my uniform top off and just laid it in one of the seats in the engine, and I put my helmet there too because I wanted to make sure that I didn't get them mixed up. Because I'm pretty sure they're, at least, because I could spot it because it has the probationary underneath the 69 number. While the juniors, there's say juniors, and I'm pretty sure the adults who are certified, it says firefighter. But when the others came back down, I put my helmet and gloves back on and went back inside with them. Like, I had my gloves with me because, of course, the place was filthy and rusted and chipping in a bunch of places. And of course, I was kind of hesitant about bringing in my helmet because it was so warm, but I heard somebody mention falling concrete. I don't know what they were saying with it, but I just heard the two words falling concrete somewhere. And so I didn't know. So I figured, well, it's probably safe to assume that some, pieces of, like, the ceiling or something, or a wall would probably come falling down. And I didn't want anything like that hitting me on the head and knocking me out or something. So I kept my helmet on. And the way I always put it on is, like, there's that piece of yellow cloth that comes off and hangs at the back to protect your head and your neck, and then there's the strap that goes here. But I always had a hard time having the strap under my chin, and so I have it back here, kind of like how a drill sergeant's hat strap stays on the back here, and have the yellow cloth, I don't even know what it's called, inside the hat for cushion, because it's kind of heavy and it kind of wobbles around. Like, if you turn your head, it'll kind of move like this. And that seems to work, for now anyways. If I'm at a scene fighting a fire sometime, I would probably take that thing out and have it over my neck. I went in there with them and we were checking out the lower floors. And there were these ditches along the floor. I don't know what they were for. Probably, like, to get waste away. I don't know. It was just something that I saw as useless and dangerous because it was gray outside. So it wasn't super dark inside this place because there were pretty big windows, but nevertheless, you really had to watch your step because those things were a few feet deep. If you ended up not watching where you were going and stepping your foot in there, you would probably end up doing an involuntary split. And that would hurt really bad. So I just ended up stepping all the way over them because I didn't really trust the crossing things very much. I just kind of had to stomp on them to test them and make sure they were still stable. And they were, but it always helps to stomp on it and test it to make sure it'll take your weight. But then there was I call it the lower ground floor because it's kind of like a basement, but it was visible from this deck on the first ground floor. So I just called it the lower ground floor because it didn't feel like a cellar or anything like that. So we go down there, and then there's even more of those ditches. Like, right below where that deck jutted out, there was one that ran vertically along this long floor, and then there were 3 more along that floor going just horizontally, just across the floor. And I went up ahead with the 2 juniors who I had gone up the stairs with, and they had flashlights. I didn't. So I kind of had to stick around with them. And I mean, I could see pretty well. I could see just fine. But a bunch of the others insisted that it's really dangerous to walk around in there without a flashlight. And especially, near the end, it was getting darker. Because at that point it was, dark blue-ish outside. And so that was the point where we kind of had to get out before it got too dark. Otherwise, you'd have to be, like, crawling around to see if there's a ditch in front of you. The 3 of us, we had gone up ahead a ways, while the others most of the adults were back behind us. And then, looking back on it in hindsight, this was hilarious, but at the time it was kind of creepy. So the people behind us start freaking out, like some of them were screaming. And I turned around, and at first I thought, wait, is there a bat in here or something? Because I hate bats. I'm scared of bats. And I mean, who isn't? But it turned out, thank God it wasn't a bat, but it was this crow or a raven, whichever one grows to be the biggest. I just know that one of them grows bigger than the other. I don't know which, but whichever one is the bigger one, that's what this was. This big black bird was flapping around and jumping out of the ditch in front of them, and they had their flashlights shining on it, and I'm sure that made it angrier. But then it just kind of settled down, and then I don't know just what made it decide to move. Maybe someone stepped a little too close, but then it just flew across this ditch into this really long and big pile of junk that was under the deck, which made up part of the first ground floor. And then after like a minute or so, one of the juniors who was with me pointed out that there was another crow in there, quote, coming at us. But I didn't see or hear anything. Like, I mean, I don't mind birds, I like birds, but if there's one flying, like, toward us, I would just as soon, hit the floor. And I almost did, but I didn't see or hear anything. So I thought maybe she was joking, because of how hilarious it was to hear the adults freaking out over that first one. So, seeing no crow there, I gave her a punch in the arm for that. And, not too hard, just something like this. But yeah, I was really annoyed. But then both of the juniors I was with, they ended up going ahead, and they were like, I'm not kidding, there really is a crow flying around, and it just went over there. And so they go up to this other pile of junk. They went up there and were shining their little flashlights in there, and one of them's like, here, it's over here, I see it. And so I walked over there just for curiosity's sake. And so I walk over there, and there's that bird. And so, I hadn't thought of this at the time. I just assumed it was a crow. But if ravens are bigger than crows, then it must have been a raven. But I'm not sure which it is. If you know which one it is, put it in the comments section. But yeah, this bird was just sitting there, kind of looking around a little bit like this. It was probably scared. I can imagine it was, with that flashlight shining in its face. But anyway, I just went over there just to see if it actually was there. To see that it wasn't a joke. But then after, just a minute or so, I'm thinking, okay, I've had my eye fill, I'm just gonna go walk back. So I just kind of walked around for a bit, and then as I went back the way we came, the adults who had first seen that crow were coming right past me, and I just kind of said over my shoulder, leave the crow alone. But it wasn't too long after that we ended up having to head out, because it was getting darker. And see, at that point, I did have to kind of stick around with those couple of juniors, because they had flashlights and I didn't. But yeah, so from there we headed out, and so I hadn't really heard the details about what they found out, but I just remember, like I said, I just remember hearing from my friend who was driving the engine, saying to the guy in the shotgun seat that part of the ceiling was caved in. So I don't know if it mostly passed the safety inspection, or if they warned these other guys about it and told them you should have this fixed. So yeah, I didn't really hear a whole lot, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would give more details. But, that little adventure was interesting. Because of areas like that where it's dangerous to walk around without a flashlight, just the other day I went to this auto shop to look for a tactical flashlight that I could attach to my helmet. Because, with that Station 69 logo up here, there's this really strong rubber strap that goes around the helmet just above the brim, and on either side there's these two oval-shaped holes on either side. And what you use those for is, and it's for that purpose, if you stick a skinny flashlight through there, then you can turn it on, like that, kind of like a headlamp, basically. A headlamp with extra head protection. So yeah, that's how that little adventure went, and it was pretty interesting, pretty surprising. I hope we do stuff like that more often. Because, yeah, that's the first safety, inspection, exploring kind of thing that I've been on with them, and I've been with them for almost a year. So, I guess depending on how this video is received, I'll have to tell some more stories about what goes on among the fire station. Okay, well, I guess that's it for now. I don't want to keep going on and on, because otherwise this video will be too long. But, yeah. If I can think of more stories and can say it clearly enough, I'll do another one of these.